Hello, coming to you from the party city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Celebratory Bryce. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a bi-weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 58. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Bohnanza out of the dust, and a contributor will dust off Grand Cru. On the reaction segment, I finished telling about my time at BGG Con. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Tainted Grail. On the Obscure Bryce game segment, I review DuckDuckGo. We wrap up the episode by counting down my top 10 games of 2019. I had a chance to bring Bohnanza, Uwe Rosenberg's classic farming-themed card game, out of the dust recently. It's been at least 10 years since I've played it, which is an estimate because it's been well before I started logging play 7 years ago. But 10 years feels about right. It's a game I haven't thought much about in all these years because it's a game that needs the right group and a large group to ideally pull off. Both of those criteria aligned at a recent game group get-together, and I had a fun time revisiting this one. I'd forgotten how tight this game was. All 6 players were within a couple of points of each other. I shouldn't have bought that third bean field, though. It always seems like a good idea at the time, but it's often the difference between victory and defeat. This session of the game was at Spielbound, Omaha's local board game cafe, but I have a copy myself, and I'm going to start looking for an opportunity to play with others. I've got some friends in mind who I think will enjoy the novelty of this one, because the game remains novel despite its age. It's still a very unique card game that very few games since have borrowed any mechanics from. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Low, username Lohengren, brought Grand Cru out of the dust. Grand Cru is a 2010 Eggertspiel title from designer Ulrich Blum, who designed the recently released Minecraft Builders and Biomes game that I will mention a couple of times later in this episode. Grand Cru is a wine-themed economic game. Low last played it 8 years and 4 days ago and writes, "It's been 8 years since I last played Grand Cru, and all of my previous plays were with just 2 players. So I was more than happy to play it this month with 3. The game borrows from Steam, I think, in that players start with no money and are forced to take loans from the beginning and have to manage their debt through most of the game while trying to create an economic engine around vineyards and winemaking. On a player's turn, they get to do one action, and that's it. The actions are limited to starting an auction on a vineyard or enhancement, raising a bid on an existing auction, purchasing an item they are currently winning the auction in, or paying $7 to buy something immediately. Harvesting from one vineyard, selling one type of wine from one vintage, or using an enhancement, which is generally one of the regular actions with a bit of a bonus. Most importantly, the turn end is triggered when 4 rounds have passed and one player has harvested all of their grapes from all their vineyards. Each other player then gets one more turn. What this means is players who act more efficiently and or have smaller wineries can really screw a less efficient larger opponent who needs more actions to complete everything they'd like to do. In our game, we all had relatively the same sized wineries, so even though I tended to pass first, it never really hurt the others that much. And in fact, P won so many festivals that he got more extra actions to make up for the actions lost earlier. And that was enough to have him pay off his loans first and win the game. Now that the 3 of us have played it once, I'd like to play it again in the not-too-distant future. I just wish the enhancement tile graphics were a bit better defined. The iconography on them is fine, but the pastel colors just wash out and it's hard to see what they are in low light. Thanks for the contribution, Lo. I'm not aware of this game, but I have liked every other wine-themed game I've been exposed to, so this one goes on the want-to-try list. Reaction segment time. Last episode, I started telling about my experience at BGG Con. I will continue that this episode. There were some events at BGG Con that I made sure to schedule time around. I kicked off the con after getting checked into my room by participating in the pitch card tournament Wednesday night. I played fairly average games, finishing in the middle of the pack during both preliminary games, which wasn't good enough to progress to the semifinals. Friday night was the Rainbow BGGers meetup where I played several hands of just one while cross-dressed with some very delightful and pleasant people. Only made one trade during the BGG Con math trade, but I was impressed at how efficient the meetup was Thursday night to find my trade partners. The BGG Con virtual flea market meetup immediately afterwards was even more organized and efficient. Between selling games there and at the BGG Con Bazaar Friday morning, I was able to finance the 40-ish games I picked up at the flea market and at the exhibitor hall. I was on the lookout strictly for deals on items from the wish list and had a lot of success. I think my most exciting purchase was acquiring a bundle of Orleans, both expansions, and the Geek Up Bit component upgrade set for $80. My shopping at the exhibitor hall was relegated to only the infamous Rio Grande booth, where I picked up New Frontiers, Link, and several Race for the Galaxy expansions for 75% off. It was quite the challenge after the con to pack up my little Nissan Cube with my acquisitions, but some Tetris-style action made everything fit in the end, though I had to be very careful about which doors I opened and how on the way home. I was able to get in a few demos in the exhibitor hall while browsing as well. Ishtar, the new Bruno Cathala game, disappointed me, but the new Minecraft board game Builders and Biomes from Ravensburger surprised me with its quality and engaging mechanics. Naturally, for this type of convention, I got in some fun pickup games during the convention too. The system of players wanted flags worked out well, and I was able to find players for the games I wanted to play without difficulty. I wound up teaching games of Bruges, since I always have to play a Feld game at conventions, Western Legends because I wanted to try out my new Anti-Up expansion and Giant Playmat, and Apex Theropod Inhabit the Earth and Time Chase. BGG Con was a great experience, and I hope to make it back again soon. In fact, I might postpone my plans to attend several different cons just to do this one again sooner. It was that good. This week on the What I've Been Playing segment, I'm going to tell you about Tainted Grail, the freshly Kickstarter fulfilled mega epic adventure game from publisher Awakened Realms and designers Krzysztof Piskorski and Marcin Swierkot. I wasn't going to initially back this game, but it got so much buzz while on Kickstarter that I finally gave into the hype, did some research, and looked into the game in depth. And I really liked what I saw. I've always been a fan of adventure and exploration games. It's a very nostalgic genre for me because it's what Dinosaurs of the Lost World, the first game I ever bought with my own money way back when I was 12, fits into. It's the genre that Star Trek the Adventure Game, another favorite from my teen years, and Tales of the Arabian Nights, one of the first games I bought when I started to seriously get into board games, falls into. The Tainted Grail campaign captured my imagination with its possibilities so much that I did something I rarely do, and went all in on the campaign. Base game, upgrades, neoprene mat, all the expansions. I even paid for split shipping so I could get the base game while the expansions were still being developed. Don't tell my wife, but it's the most I've ever spent on a Kickstarter. Anyway, here's how it works. Players take the role of an inhabitant of a fantastical Arthurian setting trying to locate the true heroes of the realm and solve the mystery of an encroaching darkness and evil of some sort. They do this through an action point allowance system that is linked to their energy and health. Action points are used to travel and explore Seventh Continent-esque land cards and take part in adventures written in a book of paragraphs. The outcome of these adventures help to advance quest cards and reach the end of narrative chapters. Every now and then an encounter is triggered, which is resolved through an innovative card-based combat system. Players have both combat and diplomacy decks for various kinds of encounters, and they play a little differently in the sense that combat decks attempt to deal a certain amount of damage to an opponent, while diplomacy decks try to advance an infinity meter a certain amount. Players resolve encounters and deal damage, or advance the infinity meter by chaining cards together, matching icons together, and resolving special effects. At the end of each combat round, the object of the encounter attacks or does something. Rewards for defeating encounters or resolving adventures comes in the form of unlocking secrets, attaining new items, acquiring wealth, or earning experience points. Experience points can be spent on leveling up stats, which make combat and diplomacy icons more effective, and gaining new, more powerful cards for the combat and diplomacy decks themselves, adding a gradual deck-building element to the game. The combat element is where Tainted Grail really shines. I had a lot of fun with Seventh Continent last year, but the one thing that falls short in that game for me is the combat. It's okay and interesting enough for me to continue playing the game, but it does seem to take a backseat to the narrative and exploration experience of the game. But the Tainted Grail combat system stands on equal footing with these elements. The card-chaining combat system is truly engaging and makes me interested in racking up experience points to improve my stats and decks, where otherwise I might just care about advancing the story. Tainted Grail has really impressed me so far. I'm just a few chapters into the game, but I find myself thinking about the game a lot, and it's my go-to solo game right now. It might be the adventure game I've been waiting all my life for. The adventure game that manages to combine exploration, story, and interesting mechanics all in the same place. It's very cool stuff, and I'm glad I have additional content for it on the way. Obscure Bryce game segment time. This week on the segment, I'm going to tell you about Duck, Duck, Go, a 2008 family-weight programming game from publisher Ape Games and designer Kevin G. Nunn. Kevin isn't a well-known designer, though he does have a fair amount of titles to his credit. His highest-ranked game is Rolling Freight, but he's probably best known for Sentinels Tactics, a Sentinels of the Multiverse spin-off game, but Duck, Duck, Go is definitely my favorite of his designs. It caught my eye at one of the first Gen Cons I attended several years ago because the main component of this game are actual rubber duckies, and the publisher had a huge display of them for this game. It was quite eye-catching. In fact, as far as I know, Ape Games still displays this game and its ducks at their booth at the conventions they attend. When someone buys a copy, they get to pick out a custom assortment of rubber duckies to go along with it. Whenever I see them at a con, I always pick up another set of ducks to go with my copy. Each turn, players will choose a Robot Rally-esque direction path card for their duck to follow in an attempt to get their duck to visit all of the buoys in the bathtub, collecting their respective tokens, and be the first one to get washed down the drain. Each of these path cards has a unique number assigned to it, and the longer, more complicated paths resolve after the shorter, more straightforward ones. Bumping into the edge of the tub, another duck, or a non-token buoy causes the duck to reverse direction, thus interjecting an unpredictable amount of chaos into the game. And that's all there is to it. Obviously, as you might expect with a game that uses rubber duckies as components, the game is ridiculously adorable. But it's a fun time too. Now, if you don't like Robo Rally, you're not going to like this game. If you're a serious games-only gamer, you're not going to like this game. And if you're anti any kind of chaos, this is not the game for you. There are plenty of strategic decisions to make in regards to choosing which path card to play when and which buoy to go for a win, but it's the type of game that will sabotage your plans every now and then, and test who best reacts to that. People who are okay with games with elements like that will appreciate this one, and with that in mind, not only do I recommend the game for families, but I recommend it for hobby gamers too. Because the game tests its players, it's a genuinely satisfying game to win. I have no problem dashing my kids' hopes to pieces in this game and making them work for a win. I have no problem with gloating about my occasional victory over them either. Well, 2019 is in the books, which means it's time for 2019 Top 10 lists. I'll be spending the next several episodes sharing my various Top 10 lists. This week I'm going to count down my Top 10 games released in 2019. Number 10, Minecraft Builders and Biomes, the surprise of BGG Con for me. I purchased a copy on Amazon after the convention and gave it to my oldest son for Christmas. We're going to be demoing it at Spielbound later this week and look for a more detailed reaction in a future What I've Been Playing segment. Number 9, Barrage. It's probably a bit long to see very frequent play in the future, but there's no denying the engaging, intricate mechanics in play. It would be a Kickstarter not backing regret for me if Cranio Creations hadn't screwed up their Kickstarter so bad. I'll look to add it to my collection when they've worked out the kinks in a later edition. Number 8, Carnival of Monsters, another delightful drafting game from Richard Garfield. A tight economy, huge deck of cards to draft from, and no set card division into ages guarantees this one plays out differently each time. It makes each game uniquely and engagingly challenging. Number 7, Just One. I love word association games, and the cooperative spin on this one makes it feel different from other games that might otherwise be a little mechanically similar. I think it deserves its Spiel des Jahres win, and it's one I'm happy to play at any large gathering. Number 6, Horrified. Maybe the best game to come out of Prospero Hall yet. Everything works in this one, challenging co-op, fun theme, accessible and satisfying for any group, and a diverse array of monsters for tons of replayability. I got this for my wife for Christmas. She loves it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it winds up as one of our most played games of 2020. Number 5, Tainted Grail. Just rewind this episode a little bit to hear my thoughts on this one. Tainted Grail gets the honor of being the game I most recently learned to appear on this list. Number 4, Trogdor! Beautiful production and